Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Ranking Member Cantwell. Three bills I wanted to note that we passed through this committee today. One is with Senator Blunt, focused on the tourism industry and getting the information we need so we can make good decisions in the months to come. The report last week found the travel industry has lost over $450 billion in spending since this pandemic began, and it is very, very difficult for people working in that area, and I think more needs to be done. I'm hopeful perhaps even before the end of the year as we look at a pandemic package. Secondly, two bills with Senator Moran, the COVID Home Safety Act and the Protecting Seniors from Emergency Scams Act. Both of them, again, situations that have been exacerbated during the pandemic. I think people don't always realize, as Senator Moran and I know, that the leading cause of death for kids in the U.S. was actually unintentional injuries, with about 12,000 child deaths, 9.2 million emergency room visits due to unintentional injuries at home. And they have been, again, exacerbated by the pandemic because there's a lot of kids hanging out at home and parents trying to work while they're at home. We've got things like bikes, trampolines, something we could use around here, burns, hand sanitizer poisoning. So there's just been an increase in these kinds of injuries. Maybe not the first thing you think about when you wake up, but it's something that's really affecting people. So what this bill does is just get the agencies to start working with the media and get some of this information out there so parents can better protect their kids. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today, as you note, we are here to consider three nominees to the Federal Election Commission, which is, of course, the independent agency responsible for enforcing our federal campaign finance laws. First, I want to bring up the fact that given this committee has oversight over federal elections, it's important to acknowledge that nearly 160 million Americans voted this year, more people than ever before in United States history. And even though we are in the midst of a global pandemic, elections were administered successfully due to the hard work of state and local officials, both Democratic and Republican and independent state and local officials. Last week, officials in charge of election security working in the Trump administration, including DHS, people there, secretaries of state, and the Election Assistance Commission put out a joint statement that said the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. Again, this is a testament to local officials, also to Chris Krebs, who unfortunately was fired yesterday by the president via tweet. But I know that he has a respect, as I saw the statements from many Republican senators today, of many in the U.S. Senate. Regardless of that unfortunate incident, I would say we all owe a debt of gratitude to all these hardworking election officials. Turning to the topic of today's hearing, with the exception, as the chairman noted, of a brief period this summer, the FEC has been without a quorum for nearly 15 months. Over that time, I've repeatedly urged my colleagues to work with us to get the agency up and running. FEC nominees are typically confirmed in bipartisan pairs. This spring, the majority chose to push forward a controversial nominee without a Democratic nominee. This approach opened the door to the FEC losing its quorum just 46 days after it was restored. This persistent lack of quorum is a major problem, and we know why, and we must have an FEC that can enforce the law. The truth is we need it more than ever. The Center for Responsive Politics estimates spending for the 2020 election cycle was approximately, ready for this, $14 billion. That's more than double the 2016 election cycle, and it includes $2.6 billion in outside spending by super PACs, political parties, and dark money groups. In order for our democracy to work for the people, we need strong rules for campaign spending, and we need a strong agency to enforce the rules. Congress created the FEC for that very purpose after the Watergate scandal, to help restore the public's faith in the electoral policy. Since taking over as ranking member of this committee, I've worked with several of my colleagues to propose solutions to try to get the agency back on track, including a bill At the very least, we should work together to select strong, experienced nominees from both parties who understand that their job is to enforce the law and protect our election system. I am concerned about the views of some of these nominees. I will briefly go through them. I did have a good discussion with all three of them. I appreciate that, and I had the opportunity to discuss views such as social media, political ads, and the need for the FEC to move forward with rules regarding those ads, which account for billions of dollars in political spending. First, Mr. Dickerson has extensive experience in campaign finance. Unfortunately, he has been focusing on less, not more, transparency for political spending. He's opposed restrictions on individual donations, attempts to bring transparency to corporate and dark money spending after the Citizens United decision, and efforts to stop foreign money from influencing our elections. If we're going to break out of the gridlock that has paralyzed the FEC, we need commissioners that can work together to find areas where they agree. It is my sincere hope that Mr. Dickerson's views on the role of money and transparency in politics do not make it harder to find consensus with the other commissioners. Mr. Cooksey, already discussed by Senator Cruz, he does not have an extensive record on campaign finance or election issues, and his testimony for this hearing doesn't provide enough information regarding his qualifications, his view of the commission, and how he plans his approach to his role if confirmed. Again, I appreciated the fact that he talked to me and we discussed some really important issues, and I appreciated the words that we heard that they were willing to work on issues like the political ads and the fact that we don't have any set rules in place for social media ads. Finally, we have Ms. Broussard, and I so appreciated, Mr. Chairman, your introduction of her. I have been urging the White House to nominate her for more than a year. Our hope was that months ago, she would have confirmed to fill the vacant seat. I won't go into all that, but let's talk about her because she's great. Ms. Broussard has served as a lawyer at the FEC for 12 years, both as a staff attorney and as a commissioner, counsel to a commissioner. She is immensely qualified and well respected by her peers. Her experience as an FEC staffer would bring an important perspective to the commission. She would also be the first person of color to serve on the FEC, and I hope my colleagues that are here remotely listen to that. It's kind of incredible there has not been anyone in the past, and I can't think of anyone better to be the first. The pandemic has shown us how resilient our democracy can be when dedicated professionals work to respond to a crisis. As I said, state and local election officials rose to the challenge, and now it is time for the FEC to rise to the challenge of the issues ahead of them. Of course, individual cases that come before them, but then the key is modernizing some of our rules and the like to make them more responsive to the challenges of our elections of our time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I actually might defer to someone else till she gets back on. So. Okay. If another senator wants to go.
Hello?
Okay. Are you on, Ms. Broussard?
I am. I apologize. I think that's the technology that we're working in today.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Ms. Broussard, at a judiciary hearing recently, Mr. Zuckerberg had trouble getting on, the head of Facebook. So don't worry about it.
He's
Or was it commerce? The commerce.
technically challenged.
Yes, that happened. All right. So I wanted to first ask you, Ms. Broussard, about we talked about this over the phone as I did with the other two nominees, the weak disclaimer and disclosure rules on online political ads. We know in 2016, there were actually ads paid for by rubles. Fortunately, some of the companies have changed some of their policies, so that has gotten better. But I asked Mr. Zuckerberg about this just yesterday. We continue to have issues with ads and including ads that aren't looked at by human beings and then get through and are not true. So I have this Honest Ads Act, which is bipartisan legislation with Senator Graham that would apply the same disclosure and disclaimer rules on political ads that we have for TV, radio, and print. Could you talk about your views on this and if you think the FEC could also take care of this? And I think it's important to look at it's not just candidate ads, it's also issue ads. Ms. Broussard.
So, thank you. So the Honest Ads Act would obviously increase or expand the definition of public communication to the online political spending. I see this as an opportunity to increase transparency ads. The Honest Ads Act would also prevent the direct or indirect spending of foreign entities into our political discourse, which would provide a greater transparency to the American people. As it relates to the FEC, if Congress enacted this law, it would be, of course, the responsibility of the commissioners to work together to craft regulations that would affect that. I think the greatest start would be a look at the rulemaking for the internet disclaimer rules that, excuse me, are currently before the commission now, and that it's stalled as a result of a lack of quorum. That rulemaking, in fact, had an expansion or inclusion of the definition of a public communication, but the Honest Ads Act would obviously take it into a broader perspective and work on a greater transparency.
Right. So the way I look at it, the commission could do some of this by rule, and then the law would be very helpful to get into place. Mr. Dickerson, last year in a speech, you argued that online political ads should not be regulated because they amount to such a small portion of political speech. I just want to make sure you know that as of 2018, Facebook and Google collectively sold over 16 million political ads worth over $3.2 billion. I don't think I have the 2020 numbers on them, but what I do have is a number on broadcast ads, 2.5 billion in 2020, just to give you some comparison. So if you look at over $3.2 billion on just two platforms, that's only two in the last 3 years, where are you on this still? I know we talked about this over the phone, but we're just simply, Senator Graham and I are trying to make sure that the rules applied are the same on both TV, broadcast, as they are when it comes to these social media platforms.
I appreciate the question, and thank you for the chance to comment on it. You know, the difficulty in this area is that there are two lines of Supreme Court precedent, as you know. There's one which says that there's a right of privacy of association and belief under the First Amendment. The other is that there's this need for transparency in certain types of political spending. That is a very difficult balance, and as I've said publicly and in our call, Senator, you know, I do think that those sort of balancing questions are best left to the wisdom of the American people's elected representatives in Congress. I have been skeptical of the difficulties of bridging that gap in a way that would survive judicial review. But I have made those comments in the role of an advocate in public, and I do not consider it the appropriate role of an FEC commissioner to stand in the way of legislation.
Okay, thank you. And as you know, what will be before you if you get confirmed is this rulemaking. So I hope you'll remain open to it, and we'll take that same open view. So my last questions. For years, the FEC has frequently deadlocked in votes about whether the agency's staff should investigate potential violations. Many believe that these deadlocks have significantly impaired the agency's ability to investigate potential criminal activity, regardless of the candidate's party, and enforce the law. In order to start an investigation, 4 commissioners must find that there is a reason to believe there has been a violation of the law. And I'd ask each of you, if there are reliable public reports about a potential violation of the law, would that be enough to vote to open an investigation? If you want to, I'll just go in the order you were introduced. That's fine. Mr. Cooksey first.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think the standard for finding reason to believe is obviously a vague legal standard. It's one that can't be particularly quantified. I would say that credible news reports could be part of the evidence for finding reason to believe. I don't know if I could say as a categorical rule they would always be relevant, but I would certainly keep an open mind to including those in finding a reason to believe.
Well, if you need additional information beyond public reports, would you support reaching out to federal agencies to get additional information? As you know, there's a strong relationship between DOJ and the FEC.
Yes, Senator, I think referrals from federal agencies are oftentimes a very credible source of potential investigations on the civil enforcement side at the FEC.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dickerson, same two questions about.
Yeah, I would completely agree with Mr. Cooksey that the decision to find reason to believe is going to be case by case, but certainly reliable public reports of specific facts that raise that would fall within the legal definition of a violation would be the sort of thing that would be strong evidence for finding reason to believe.
And you would be open to getting additional information beyond public reports by reaching out to federal agencies to get the information?
As I understand it, Senator, other agencies in the FEC are required by statute to coordinate in that manner. And
okay.
I would urge that.
Very good. Ms. Broussard, you want to finish up here so I can turn over to our colleagues?
Everything that my co-nominees have said, I agree with their considerations for RTB. If there's sufficient information available in the complaint, there is a reason to look further. And I would support any recommendations that come before me if I am confirmed with such information.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you.